It's become very clear over the last several months as we've been able to take more depositions, put more KBR managers, employees under oath, why KBR Halliburton fought so hard to try and claim they were immune, that we didn't need to do any research. We didn't need to take any depositions into what their managers knew and why they were doing what they did at Carmet Ali and to our men in 2003. It's clear from at least the deposition testimony of current KBR employees, they're still sticking to the story that even though we're missing documentation, critical documentation from what we knew, what we saw, they just had no way of knowing that there was this dangerous hazard there at Carmet Ali from the get-go, and they're sticking to that story still. Zero recollection. Absolutely deny remembering even seeing any chemicals of any kind during the entire month-long professional assessment.
When I was there during the month specified earlier, I did not see anything unusual about, other than the areas we want to see in order to collect the data.
Did you see chemicals?
No.
Did you see any indication at the site of chemicals being used?
No.
You saw no indication that there was any chemicals on the entire site?
No.
Now, you went there and made reports, you believe, 5 or 6 times?
Yes.
Did you get shown all the reports that you created?
No.
Did you figure out what happened to them?
No, I did not ask.
Did you send in all the reports to your superiors?
Yes.
Any legitimate reason why all the reports you sent in on what you found at Carmet Ali were not maintained?
I did not ask. When I saw what I wrote 8 years ago, I was quite happy.
But you knew when you looked at it, it wasn't all that you wrote.
That is true.
What we know now from a former KBR manager of environmental, who's no longer working for him, is there's a different story about what KBR managers, particularly those back in Houston corporate headquarters, knew and when they knew about it. By the time Mr. Singh, his team went out, the sodium dichromate presence was already identified back to you at corporate headquarters.
Yes.
And not just to you, but to the other managers on this call.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Singh, was it part of his task to actually write down the chemicals they could identify there?
Well, he already knew.
Mr. Singh knew before he ever went out there, got foot on the ground, the list of chemicals at Carmet Ali.
Yes, that was my understanding.
Well, you said you had a quote negotiation. How long did this negotiation last?
Long enough.
1 minute?
Pardon?
1 minute?
Probably in the morning.
One morning, the whole deal was cut.
No, the one morning we went through the terms and conditions in the contract.
So this potentially billion-dollar deal, no bid with KBR, terms and conditions were negotiated over the course of a morning?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, but you're the contract manager negotiating this deal. Are you telling us you had no clue whether this meant potentially millions or hundreds of millions or billions? Just no idea why you're doing this?
Well, the contract has a maximum dollar amount on it, so obviously we had what we thought would be the high-end range.
And that was?
Do you have a copy of the contract? I'd have to look at it and see what it is.
You can't remember at all any idea of the range?
It was over $1 billion, but I don't know how much.
It's also clear that there were real reasons, follow the money, about what happened and why it happened. This was a no-bid deal negotiated in a shockingly casual way by KBR with our government. It's also clear that once the work started, once the war started, KBR went back to do an add-on that meant that no matter what they did, who they did it to, they weren't going to pay. It was a bailout. This whole add-on after the contract indemnity came about at the request of KBR, didn't it?
Yes.
An indemnity is something extra added to that contract. Fair?
Yes.
This indemnity provision came about because of a concern about KBR, the company, at risk of having to do what if there was an injury or death to someone?
No, it was about risk on performance.
Well, risk of what happening to human beings?
I don't remember what the language in the indemnification was.
Even if they cause injury or death to civilian employees?
Under the provisions of the clause, that's correct.
Even if they cause injury or death to American soldiers?
It does not carve out an exception for civilians or soldiers.
Which means?
That means that if, in fact, the activities fall within the definition of the clause, then KBR could apply for reimbursement. That's right.
Even for death or injury to an American soldier?
That is correct.
Even for death or injury to a British serviceman?
That's correct.
Even death or injury to an Iraqi national or other third world national working on a KBR project?
That's correct.
Just from what I read here, it just seems like they were aware of a potential problem, and they were concerned about sharing it because of the impact it might have.
What do you mean by that, other impact?
Well, either the health of the KBR employees, or the fact that they may have to shut that plant down until they get cleaned up, and that would be a huge delay in the project. And I think they were on a timeline that that they wanted to stick to, and I think there was some concerns with all that.
Even August 15, 2003, when directly asked for information, you felt no personal responsibility to share the information you were aware of to protect the soldiers on site.
Well, I thought this HS&E manager was supposed to do that.
Not you.
Not me.
No personal responsibility.
No.
KBR daily security meeting with commanders of the National Guard from Oregon, Indiana, South Carolina, required to notify those commanders about what KBR knew about sodium dichromate on the ground at those meetings under this contract?
KBR notified the client. That was our responsibility.
These meetings where they're looking face to face with the commanders of the men actually going out to Karmat Ali, required to share the information with those men about what KBR knew about sodium dichromate, hexavalent chromium at Karmat Ali, if you know.
KBR notified the client as we were supposed to.
Did that mean that included the commanders they were looking in the eye as those men were going out to Karmat Ali?
That wasn't our client.
How easy was it for any human being, KBR, at any point, May, June, July, August.
They had a soldier right beside them. They could always, and there's always a platoon leader out there every day on the site. And I rotated. Then a platoon sergeant that those two knew how to get a hold of me.
Disappointing to you? KBR, disappointing at all?
Very disappointed that they had this information and didn't share it.
Why?
I'm dying now because of it.